This is Radio Mereb on 105.8 megahertz. Radio Mereb's English program is continuing. We had news already, and now it's time for discussion on current events. And this time I'm going to have a discussion with Radio Mereb's editorial board member, Dereje. Dereje, are you online?
Yes, I'm online, Gurmai.
Well, yeah. Maybe you were on the way home and you have followed social media. We've just heard that Ethiopia's ambassador in the United Nations, Taye Selassie, in a press conference he held after the conclusion of the informal meeting of the United Nations Security Council on the humanitarian situations in Tigray, Taye Selassie, he just simply repeated the deceptive talking points that are all familiar from, well, we were so tired from Abiy Ahmed. He clearly said what's going on in Tigray is law enforcement operation and not civil war. He said that it will also wrap up soon. He lied that there is unfettered access to aid workers all over Tigray. And, of course, he said, except when there are skirmishes. Well, he promised that the Eritrean troops will withdraw from Tigray soon, on quotation. And we don't know when it is soon. And he lied again that there is no famine in Tigray. And he said, we take the issue of famine very seriously because we have been there before. Well, Taye Selassie, can we say that he can whitewash all the atrocities that are perpetrated against our people, Dereje? What's your opinion?
I'm not surprised to read that, to hear that. As you said, I heard it and I read it when I was back home from my job. But that's not surprising because it is a thing that we have been listening the last 7 months. And if you remember from the start of the operation, Abiy Ahmed himself called it a law and enforcement operation. And that's after sometimes he came out and he said he has finished the war in Tigray. And again, he came back and he said, and now we have got a challenge and we are fighting at 8 fronts. These things have been repeating, and Abiy Ahmed himself has denied a lot about the humanitarian crisis in Tigray, the sexual abuses in Tigray, the war crimes in Tigray, and he even has said 2 months ago that Eritrean soldiers are going to withdraw from Tigray in a short period of time. Abiy Ahmed himself. Have we seen any of those things implemented in practice? No. Then that's what Taye is also repeating. When the head is not in a good position, then his followers will not be. They just reflect what he says. You remember, I just want to give you one example, and I want to relate it to what leadership means. Here in Norway, if you remember in the COVID time, Arne Solberg, she was trespassed this COVID rule, and she has to be punished for that. And she came out and said, yes, I take responsibility, and I will do it. Then she did it. By doing so, the people will see her as a good example and follow her, and politicians will see her as a good example and follow her. That's what's happening in Ethiopia also. When Abiy Ahmed is a liar, when Abiy Ahmed is a criminal, when Abiy Ahmed doesn't have this generic humanity, then Taye and all his cabinet members and followers will not have. So it is not surprising that he said that, and he doesn't care about the people of Tigray.
Yes, Dereje. Of course, Taye Selassie, originally from Gondar, unfortunately I can see the Amharan intelligentsia. We know what they think about Tigray, and as an apologist, that's what he's doing. He's just adding salt to our wounds.
Yeah.
Well, we were also told that Abiy Ahmed again is sending a goodwill delegation. You might have heard it. Of course, we were discussing this with you earlier. I heard that Takadda Alamu, a career diplomat, is going to lead it. Takadda Alamu, a career diplomat, of course, but he was a diplomat during the Derg regime, and when TPLF leading a coalition to victory in Addis Ababa came in 1991, he was allowed, although he was a diplomat of the Derg, he was normally allowed as a career diplomat to continue, and he was, as we know, well-known aide to the Tigrayan diplomat who were recently massacred to Atosium. Whatever. The delegation, what's the objective of the delegation? Because what I can see is, the delegation is coming to the United States. United States already have a sanction against Ethiopia on economic matters and the visa, what have you. What could be the objective of sending this delegation to the United States now?
I guess the objective is to convince the U.S. to change their decision, the sanctions that they made on the visa restriction and the economic sanction to the security sector. So I think they want to, if possible, if they think that is possible, that's what they are planning. That is number one. Number two is that probably they saw that the U.S. is very serious about this issue, about the issue of Tigray, and the U.S. is fighting at every front so that the situations will be better. So probably they might expect more measure from the U.S. So maybe it is a measure to stop additional sanctions, additional serious measures from the U.S. side. Yeah. But I don't think that will work. I don't think that will work because number one, I think I will elaborate it here, Germay.
Okay, do that.
Why? When it comes,
why can't it work? Exactly.
Yeah. Now, number one, the facts. The facts for the last 7 months are established. If you remember, at the start of war, there was a journalist from the Dutch, VRT TV. He came and he drove in the West Tigray, and the documentation actually started there. And he has a video footage that shows massacres, a video footage that shows looting, and that was followed by Medicines Sans Frontiers that entered Tigray when Abiy announced Mekelle is captured. And when the first convoy for Mekelle with medicines was sent, then Medicines Sans Frontiers were there. And they have documented the hospitals were looted, the health stations were looted, girls and women were sexually abused, and they are in need of serious medical help. And the infrastructure was destroyed. All these things have been documented by Medicines Sans Frontiers. And here I am talking about high-level officials from Medicine. The president himself was in Tigray. And that followed by the International Federation of Red Cross. The president of that federation has been in Tigray also. And he has reported and documented all these things that we have been talking. The raping, the mass killings, the mass graves, the hospitals destroyed. All these things he has reported and even said he has never seen in his 20 years of experience as a humanitarian organization employee. So that was reported. And in addition to that, the UN organizations, they were entering there and reported the mass killings, the atrocities committed there. Then CNN was there. And CNN has documented recently also what the Eritrean soldiers are doing. But in addition to that, remember that U.S. has a U.S. aid in Tigray, an organization following every activity, what's happening in Tigray. All these things are already documented and facts are established. And these facts are not very easy to change. That is the first thing. The other thing is that U.S. has been following, technology-wise, the U.S. has a lot of intelligence satellites in the area, Red Sea area, and they know what happens. Probably they even know how many Eritrean soldiers have entered Tigray. So they know that, and this is a fact. So given this situation, they have been warning the Ethiopian government to make action, to stop the fighting, to end the atrocities, and to force the Eritrean forces leave Tigray. They have been very patient with that. They have asked Abiy Ahmed a lot of times. They have given him the opportunity, but the Ethiopian government didn't listen. That is number one. The other reason why it doesn't work is the credibility of the Ethiopian government is zero as of today. If you have noticed, Abiy Ahmed, after he captured Mekelle, he has said not a single civilian was dead. And some weeks after, he came and said, yes, of course, there are some casualties. He said no civilians were exposed to war crime. Then he came and admitted in a parliament that women were raped. He even mentioned they were raped with men. Our soldiers are raped with weapons. He did put it like that. And he has said TPLF is dead, but he has resurrected TPLF several times. And when he was talking with international leaders, Western leaders, he posts when he has talked about Tigray, when they have referred about Tigray to him, but he posts on the Twitter message something else. So all these things have contributed that the Ethiopian government is a pathological liar.
Exactly. To add to that, of course,
because of these two things, the credibility, they have lost the credibility. There is no credibility anymore for the Ethiopian government. And number two, these facts are already established that are impossible to change. That is what I believe in.
Yes, I can you put it correct, but what I can add, you might have observed after the sanctions, what were Abiy's government doing actually? That's what amazes me, because after the sanction, what happened was, especially his lapdogs, Demeqe, Oromia's president, Shimelis Abdissa, how they ridiculed literally the sanctions. They said, we don't want this pest food wheat, United States wheat. We don't need visa. We just go to Moyale or Adwa. I don't need... they were ridiculing it, and they had a remote demonstration, clearly, where they dragged the United States flag, and the United States, of course, has an embassy and follows this attentively. It might have the reports. Of course, this is maybe not surprising to the United States, but what amazes me is, after all saying all this, after brandishing as if they have alternative in the name of sovereignty, they were branding Russia's President Putin's photograph, China's photograph, and try to openly, covertly, saying we have an alternative, United States can't do anything. And in fact, one scholar, well-educated lawyer in the United States, and in fact, counsel to Abiy Ahmed, Al-Mariam, he said, after all things, says, what is that made them change their idea and try to convince the United States with the delegations that they are sending now? Is it not surprising?
It is surprising. It is when you mentioned the actions of the Ethiopian government, and even Al Mariam that you mentioned. It is in a way childish. He is Al Mariam is living in the U.S. and for him to come out and say America is going to be destroyed,
doomed. America is going to be doomed. Exactly.
That is a rude way of putting it. And as to me, probably they didn't understand what U.S. is saying in the sanction report. If you see the sanction is actually on visa. The sanction is on aid that focuses on security cooperations. U.S. didn't even mention wheat or human sanction with regard to aid. U.S. didn't mention that. So I don't understand how Shimadlis and Dammaka, they connect that with spoiled wheat when the U.S. is talking about visa restrictions and sanctions on security cooperations. That is a childish way. Number two, they are saying that the U.S. shouldn't interfere in our internal affair. But if they have read the statement, it actually states that we care about the sovereignty of Ethiopia. It says that. But they are asking this, they are doing this because the atrocities committed in Tigray are beyond imagination. Quite a lot of horrific war crimes were performed there, and as a result, they want the human rights aspect of that country to be improved, the human rights aspect of Tigray to be improved, and occupiers from Eritrea to leave Ethiopia. Actually, when you see that, it is the U.S. fighting for the Ethiopian sovereignty than the Ethiopians who are saying that Eritreans, for them to be in Tigray, it is justifiable. It is ridiculous. So that is an act of cuzzling here, what they call it in Norway. So they didn't understand. And the actions that they took with the US, China, and Russia, it is just like your enemy is my enemy aspect of the game. And they want to have that we have some one strong ones that can compete with you guys, and we have them as a friend, so we don't care about you. But at the end of the day, they see that they are not going to tolerate what US is going to take. Probably some more actions will come out if the situation will not be improved. That has the US Secretary State has already told us that more actions might come, and they are scared of that. That is the reason. I think the main objective why they are sending at the end of the day is because they want to stop this sanction at the level which is now. So it was childish, but it is like we have a saying that a fly tries to be as big as it's
Dereja, as you said, today, Taye Etzkaslasey, as ambassador of Ethiopia in the United Nations, he said, well, things that we have heard many times from Abiy, that the war will be wrapped up, Eritreans will leave soon from Tigray. But I know, as a member of the editorial board of Radio Mereb, you follow the news with us. For our listeners, that our listeners may know, what's the facts on the ground in Tigray? You know, had they have a bit of sort of improvement, at least they could have got something to negotiate. We are doing this, we are doing that, things are getting better. Can you compare what's happening on the ground and what Taye Etzkaslasey is said today, and what maybe the delegation is prepared to say, either in the United States or in Europe, to confuse the international community, if you will?
Yeah, I think it is quite the opposite happening at the ground when it comes to the humanitarian crisis in Tigray. Now the United Nations has said that 350,000 Tigrayans are in famine situation, and they are just between life and death situation. That is the biggest number since the Somali crisis 10 years ago. That is number one. So that indicates that there is no improvement. The other thing is now the UNICEF has mentioned that 33,000 children are at the risk of death because of famine again and then malnutrition again. That indicates that there is still a problem and it is aggravating, it is increasing. Third one is all these things are happening because the Eritrean troops and the Ethiopian army are blocking humanitarian aid from reaching people in need. Mark Lockwood, he said that they have got a report, 131 incidents of blockage, and 54 of them were done by the Ethiopian government, the army of the Ethiopian government. 50 were done by the Eritrean soldiers, and one was done by TDF, which I doubt it happened, but it might happen, I don't know. But then the rest by the Amara militia. That indicates you that they are determined to kill the people of Tigray with starvation. And things are not improving. And when it comes to the raping, looting, destruction, and prohibiting farmers from farming, it is continuing. Every day such kind of reports are coming. And beyond that, now newly, we have got news coming out from Tigray that Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki have started using chemical weapons.
Exactly.
White phosphorus.
Exactly.
Over the people of Tigray, over innocents. And that indicates you that the situation is even getting worse. So, with all these factors, what I believe is that Taye is continuing with psychopathic lies, while the international community knows the truth. So, this situation will make impossible for the Ethiopian government to convince the Western or the United Nations to believe what they say.
Tereje, the Tigrayan issue has been an international issue. The United Nations Security Council, G7, United States of America, European Union, they have been discussing it, and not only discussing, they have been appealing, they have been calling Abiy Ahmed to do something serious, and things are, of course, not getting better and getting, in fact, worse, from bad to worse, I mean. Well, we had hoped that, well, the sanctions will be getting, in fact, maybe imposed, more serious sanctions may be imposed. Ideally, maybe an arm embargo, like no-fly zone. We had demonstrations and so on. Now, against this delegation that's coming, either to Europe or maybe to the United States, what's expected from us? I mean, the activists of Tagaru, what's expected from the activists Tagaru, to try to call, because we just sleep? No, they can't convince anything and sleep. Or what do you think? What should the Tagaru diaspora do in such?
I think so far, when we start, I said the facts are established now when it comes to the war crimes, the atrocities, the starvation, the casualties, all these things. And it is because the Tigrayan diaspora force, the Tigrayan digital force, have been active in bringing the truth and telling the world in form of demonstration, in social media campaigns, and sharing video evidences to international media networks like CNN, BBC, Agence France Presse. So the whole diplomatic activity and awareness creation activity that we have had so far has been successful to create the awareness as to the crisis in Tigray. I was surprised last week. My daughter, she came from high school and she told me that she has got an assignment, and the assignment was, why is Tigray conflict happening, and what has the United Nations Security Council has done so far? And
interesting.
That indicates in a way that the Tigray has become an agenda, and not only on the big international meetings,
down to the
but down to the people. Down to the people, it is becoming. So that's very good. So to continue this activity, it is the minimum that we should do. We should continue demonstrating and creating awareness as to the terrible situation that we are
exposing the horrendous crimes of these fascists.
Yes, war crimes. And we have to continue with our diplomatic activity, meeting with the members of parliament, meeting with the government officials, and telling them to take measures. That's important. And we have to continue also our campaign on social media, on Twitter especially, and informing higher officials, respected officials, both in the United Nations and also in the Western countries, so that they can continue with the pressure, and so that they can, for example, take sanction on economic sanction, more measures, and also embargo on military equipment. They have to force them. But the most important thing that we should do at this stage is, even if G7, for example, has said very nice words that has been said before also, they have just repeated that. But everybody, every nation in the world is expecting the United Nations Security Council to take an action with regard to that. So I hope the US is very determined in doing that. I hope all the members of the United Nations Security Council has to acknowledge that the situation is worse. They have had a statement in March, if you remember, about the humanitarian situation. And Abiy is not following, Abiy is not respecting that statement that came out from the Security Council. Then I think they have to discuss the situation again, because their statement is not respected by Abiy for further action. So we, the Tigrayan diaspora here, we have to fight for that. And we who are living here in Norway, we know that Norway is a member of United Nations Security Council. I think we have to put more pressure to the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to the Norwegian government and the parliament, so that they can be the voice of us and the voice of the voiceless in Tigray.
Last but not least, to all this diplomatic success, or that Tigray became an issue overall, the United Nations Security Council, the United States, European Union, what have you, the role of the TDF, the Tigrayan Defense Forces, is, I think, also the most important part. Here, when Taye Etskaslasy today in his now clearly says that it will wrap up, can you comment on what is on the ground regarding the TDF? Does it look that it will wrap up so easily, and that Abiy, what has been said so far, what the reality is, and what from local sources? Obviously, we are Tagaru and we have local sources, in fact, that precede, in fact, the international news outlets. So we know the facts. We call our people, and we have. What have you followed so far for our listeners, and we can maybe round up our discussion after answering this one.
I think TDF, when Abiy started the war, he said that it's going to be finished in 3 days or in a week. We are now in the 8th month. And actually, everything that we do, why Tigray is prevailing so far, it is because of the TDF at the ground. If the Tigray Defense Force was not
they had been defeated,
then we wouldn't be sitting here and talk about the crisis in Tigray right now. Yeah. So it is thanks to them for sacrificing their life, and they are fighting, and they are determined, and they are growing. That's what I am noticing on the social media. You see TDF soldiers dancing after victory in different parts of Tigray, and that is really very motivating part. So even though we say that the international community has to take more actions, I think the main job is going to be done by the Tigray Defense Force at the ground. And we who are living here in the diaspora, we are just supporting them in whatever ways that we can, so that there will be some support for their effort. The major job is theirs, but we are as supporters, as support for them. That's what we are doing. So Taye didn't understand the reality, or he doesn't want to admit the reality. That one, we have seen it Grimai before. Brahanu Jula has said it. Yeah. Abiy Ahmed has said it. And TDF has been dead several times, and at the same time resurrected several times. That indicates they are intact and they are going forward.
Daraj, a member of the editorial board of Radio Mereb, I should thank you because you had a very hectic day today. Thank you very much. Truth will prevail. Tigray will prevail.
Tigray will prevail.
Thank you.
Tigray will try to serve.
Sir.
Thank you.
عدي على جيو نبري عاذبو عدهم جقلو عدهم سبحابو عدي مقليو ما خلن درتا عدهم وينتي عدهم سبوالتا عدي يولع عليو أقاموا ولو علو عد خلو ميتي عد ذكاء عد يسعد ويو حمر أخصم الشيء عد اللي كونتي عد ضمس بسر عد يتسلمتي والقايت تسقدي عد سمون الشر عد توم سبقاندي عديتم بليو حوزينا برقلي مرت ذن قطقطو جغانو ذبقول أقريت العال يبين قليل نبعينا متقري عيني مقل بداية العشبون ودعت يوم بداية العشبون ودعت يوم بداية العشبون ودعت يوم